Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Jamf and their Jamf Now software that helps you manage your Apple devices from anywhere. Get started by setting up your first 3 devices free at jamf.com/MacVoices. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is MacVoices. Folks, what you're about to see and hear is a recording of an appearance by Adam Engst, Joe Kissell, and me at MacGroup-Detroit's 31st anniversary. Now, unfortunately, when doing things live like this, things go wrong. And in this case, the video recording went completely wrong. Got none of the video. Got all the audio, and it sounded great, none of the video. Which is strange because it appeared fine to MacGroup-Detroit's video screens. It looked good on my screen, but we didn't get any of it recorded. So what I've done is tried to drop in some still photos so you know who's speaking, which person is speaking when, if you are not familiar with these folks. And my apologies to you and my apologies to MacGroup-Detroit. Just technical failure. Sorry about that. Here we go.
Okay, we are live. Welcome and thank you for your patience. Everyone, with me, with the computer, we'll work this out. So today is the MacGroup 31st anniversary meeting. Ooh. Thank you all for... Woo-hoo.
There we go. There we go.
And thank you all for joining us on this very wonderful day. We also have some guests who are at least going to entertain you. They've been entertaining me for the last few minutes. When I call you out, please wave. Adam Engst. And Adam has visited us, about 20 years ago?
Oh gosh, it's been a while since I was there in person. But yeah, I've been there, and I think I may have done another meeting, another Skype meeting at one point too. Okay,
well, wonderful. Thank you again. And a few months ago, we had purple-haired Joe. Now Joe's not so purple-haired. Thank you for joining us again. But he's got a purple shirt. That makes
I do have a purple shirt. The hair will change color again, so don't worry. Yeah, just go. My
looking forward to it. And also, who's going to be our moderator today, Chuck Joyner. And Chuck Joyner is from MacVoices. And Chuck is going to take over this, and he is going to be the leader in this discussion. So,
that's what he thinks.
That's what he thinks? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go. We're going to have a lively discussion. And also, the audience has been instructed that if they have any questions for our panel, for Dave included, that they can text their questions and we will present them to everyone and hopefully give you the answer that you would like. All right.
Well, we'll give you an answer.
Yeah. Not sure anybody likes
it. All right. So, Chuck, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your help, Chuck. I really do. All right. So now we're going to hand this over to Chuck.
Great. Well, first, I think I'm going to include the introduction. So we're also recording this for MacVoices, so you will be able, with a little luck and all the technology working, to relive this wonderful experience that we're about to have, right? So thank you for having us. Congratulations on 31 years. That's an amazing achievement in today's world.
Thank you.
So, Joe, Adam, of course, welcome as always. It's great to see you both.
Always fun to be here.
I'm a little disappointed, Joe, on my camera. Anyway, I was trying to wear purple in honor of the loss of your purple hair, but on my camera it's looking a little more blue. So
yeah, well,
we can fix that in post.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a little color correction will fix everything.
Of course, you'll look like an Oompa Loompa, but
I don't normally. Okay, so I want to make sure that we start off with, if there are any questions so far from the audience, let's get started with that. Otherwise, we can just dive into some other things. So, Dave, anyway, do we have?
You can dive right
do we have anything yet?
You can go ahead and dive right in, Chuck.
Oh, dive right in. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so guys, it's been a little while since the three of us have talked. I'm really anxious to hear what your thoughts are on Apple spending or allegedly spending $1 billion to get into original TV production. This is a very recent development. It's not like they don't have the cash, but where do you guys see this?
I I have to say, Josh Centers, who is our managing editor at Tidbits, keeps coming to me with, news about things that are happening with DirecTV Now and Hulu and, Vudu, and I'm not making any of these names up. It's like it seems to be all streaming TV all the time now, and I'm just, Josh, you're making me grumpy. I do not want to have everything be about TV. And then Apple goes and spends $1 billion on original content. My main comment is I hope it's better than Planet of the Apps and Carpool Karaoke, because from what I've seen of those, they're just terrible.
Yeah. Joe, do you have a favorite?
Where I thought that Adam was going to go with, all these different streaming services is kind of, enough is enough. Like I was already subscribing to Netflix, and of course I got like the whole bunch of premium channels on my cable subscription. I have HBO and I have Stars, and then when Twin Peaks came out, of course I had to subscribe to Showtime, and then there are some shows that I still can't get, and I have to buy them on iTunes, and there are some shows we get on Amazon, and every time I turn around, somebody else is coming out with a streaming service that's going to have shows that I will probably really like that you can only get there. And it's really frustrating because, when I was a kid, decades ago, you just, you turned on the TV and everything was there, and you had to choose which show you were going to watch at any moment, but there were no restrictions. Then cable came along. Everybody got cable subscriptions. Now you had a wider choice. And then, VCRs came along, and then later on DVRs. So choice is great, but having to pay separately for every single provider of video entertainment is really a drag. Now, there have been these rumors for years that Apple is going to come up with some solution to this problem, some, sort of one-stop subscription for all the video stuff you want. That would be neat. I like good TV. I don't mind paying for good TV. I just don't like having so many different services, so many subscriptions, so many apps. As far as Apple's own content, as Adam said, their first couple of attempts have not been very impressive. I've been very impressed with some stuff I've seen on Netflix. I've even Yahoo has done some good stuff, but Apple has enough money. You would think they have enough talent. The proof will be in the pudding.
And I will say, Joe's absolutely right. And the other announcement that came out, again, that Josh told me about, and I'm like being grumpy about, is that Disney is pulling their content out of Netflix in 2020. It's not happening for a while. All this stuff is sort of delayed reaction. But the fact is that they're starting their own service, and they're going to have an ESPN service. And I want to actually pull it back a little bit from the sort of the TV world, because it's a bigger deal, which is that we're seeing subscriptions as a business model now, more and more. Adobe and Microsoft got into it big time with Creative Cloud, with Office 365, and more recently we've seen some of the really major software in the Mac world, Text Expander, 1Password, go to subscription models, it makes a lot of sense from each individual providers, whether it's TV provider or software provider, to do this. But what it doesn't take into account is that we as consumers will take some subscriptions, but there's got to be a limit, right? I'm happy to pay my, $10 or $12 a month or whatever it is for Netflix. And unlike Joe, I don't actually. I sort of refuse to subscribe to another service just for one show, even if it is Twin Peaks. I was like, damn it, it'll come to Netflix sooner or later. But nonetheless, you feel like you're being, I want to say nickel and dime, but the subscriptions are more like, $3 to $10 a month, and you keep adding them up, adding. There's your iCloud subscription, there's your this subscription, there's that subscription, and it's going to be a problem at some point. I really do believe that there's a tipping point for every user, and it's probably within a range, but how much are you willing to pay for all sorts of digital content, TV, software, services of any kind.
Adam, I'm right there with you, and I guess I get really frustrated with the idea that we all feel so entitled to be able to see anything and everything we want. I think there's a time approaching quickly that people are just going to have to say, no, I'm not going to watch Game of Thrones or whatever. You know, it's going to depend on how much of a priority you put on that. Or I'm going to be forced into a position of saying, I will subscribe to CBS Interactive to see the new Star Trek series, and I will abandon Game of Thrones. And I realize there are people out there that might be heresy to
well,
so,
you don't have to worry.
No offense to
because
anybody.
Game of Thrones just has like 2 more episodes left. So
okay, good. So the Game of Thrones people won't come looking for my head. Thank you, Joe.
And they would take your head. So
they would, yes.
And they would take my head. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of these service providers are starting to miss. That okay, Adam, you said it well. There's a tipping point. And at some point, we're going to have to start saying no to things. Just like, I could definitely, I don't know about you guys, I could use a helicopter. I can't afford a helicopter. So I've had to say no to the helicopter.
Helicopter and a pony.
Yeah.
So just saying.
Well, not much on the pony, but,
for the helicopter, it keeps it company.
Yeah. Have you both watched, and Adam, I think you were the one that sort of started it off, Carpool Karaoke and Planet of the Apps?
I have to admit,
I haven't.
I haven't watched much of them because they were just too painful.
Okay. I watched Planet of the Apps. I didn't hate it, but Carpool Karaoke, and maybe it's just a reflection of me and my personality, I just don't get it. I don't think it's all that funny. I don't, it has zero appeal. I think I watched 30 seconds of it and I was done.
Pretty much that is the case. I think there's a question, we have a question from the audience also here where someone was suggesting, might Apple find a way to collaborate with providers to offer channels a la carte? And that's sort of, we think of Apple as this huge, monolithic, powerful company. But the problem is that these other companies that are who have the other content are also big. And if anything, I think we're seeing the reverse happening. Again, Disney's pulling out of Netflix. Netflix was sort of the previous hub around which all that content coalesced. But everyone's saying, why would we want to give our content to someone else when we can start our own service? So I would love to see Apple do that kind of thing, but I don't know, Joe, what do you think? It just doesn't seem likely.
I think from Apple's point of view, they are already doing that in their own way. Namely, here's an Apple TV or an iPad or whatever. There's an app for each channel service you want to use, and you pay for you buy an app, you have in-app purchases, you have subscriptions and apps. It's the same thing. So I think Apple's way of looking at things is we've already solved this problem. What do you want from us? We gave you a box where you can see all these different things all in one place.
And then there was that whole weird thing though with the TV button on the Siri remote and tvOS where you'll just push this button and you'll be able to get all your shows except for Netflix and except for Amazon Prime
except ones you care about.
Right, except for anything you might ever want to watch. I have every time I push that button, it is by accident because I haven't held it down long enough to shut my Apple TV off. I literally never want to use the TV button because it doesn't have Netflix. And Amazon Prime is going to be coming to the Apple TV sometime soonish. We don't quite know when. But and we don't know even if Amazon Prime shows will be in there. I would love to have Amazon Prime shows in there because Amazon Prime subscriber for other reasons, and Amazon has done some actually very good content. Not good enough for me to want to subscribe to it just for that, but for other things. In some ways, Amazon has the best model, right? That they're giving you. Amazon Prime is really about that 2-day shipping. That's what it's about, and everything else is bonus all around the edges. It's just that trimming. And so, but it also keeps you there. You just say, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this because it's worthwhile.
Well, I want to mention another kind of related thing. It's not just about how many different services you have and how they are interrelated or not and how much you're paying. There's also a matter of when is one of these big companies going to step up and say, we found a way to give you more hours in the day? Because, Honestly, I watch an unhealthy amount of TV. I'm just going to say that I watch far too much TV, and there are some great great shows. I mean, really high quality stuff that I'm just like, wow, that's what TV is now. That's amazing. And no sooner do I get close to finishing one show than there are 3 or 4 others that are just like, wow, this is incredibly wonderful, good quality entertainment. And I get sucked into something, but I can't spend 6 or 8 hours a day watching shows. So I don't feel like the need that needs to be met is, oh, we need another company to go out and spend $1 billion making even more great original content. There's plenty. There will be plenty. That's not a need that I have. I don't think that I will live long enough to get through all of the things on my Netflix list. I will never get through all of the list of movies that I want to watch. And I'm assuming that I'm going to live to at least 90, by the way. It can't ever happen. I can't keep up with it. So I feel like that's sort of another constraint.
Well, and in fact, Joe, I will say, Tanya and I figured this out. We watch a very healthy amount of TV, which is we watch TV every night and we do physical therapy while we're doing it. So, this is like, oh, we got to watch Netflix. It's not about the TV. Let's just be clear about that. I've got to get my rolling in. So, because I got this hip thing going on. And, if I'm going to be running seriously, I got to get my rolling in. So, yeah. So Netflix has become the excuse to do PT for us. So that's good. But no, I agree with entirely. And that actually is partly why we only subscribe to Netflix, because there is an infinite amount of good content on Netflix alone. We don't have any more time in the day. So there are great shows that we know we're missing. Twin Peaks, we would love to watch Twin Peaks. We will watch Twin Peaks at some point because it will happen somewhere. But it's not happening now because it's not where we can just get to it. And so we're watching all sorts of other cool stuff, frankly.
Okay, can I have your pie then?
So what? Yeah. So what makes for good physical therapy TV, Adam?
A living room where you have enough space. And actually, I will say
no. I was talking content, Adam. I want to get into the details.
Okay, it's mostly not things to not do. We actually watched a movie last night, which is a very good movie, recommended highly, but not for PT because it was in French and subtitled. And so it's very important that you not have to look at the screen every moment to know what's going on. Because sometimes if you're rolling something on your front, you're looking at the floor for 30 seconds or something like that. It's not a big deal most of the time. You know what's happening. You know the characters are and all that. But if you got to be reading the subtitles, then it's harder. So no, seriously, we don't adjust what we watch for what we're doing. We mainly adjust what we watch when we're watching it with our 18-year-old. So. We've been working our way through the entire Burn Notice series, which has sufficient explosions for him, and it wraps up enough at the end of each show for us.
Jamf and their Jamf Now software are this week's sponsors of MacVoices. Jamf Now gives you the capability of remotely managing your devices, Macs, iPhones, and iPads. Even better, Jamf Now makes the process simple. No IT expertise needed, so you can focus on your business, not your tech. One thing is for sure, no one is deploying fewer devices. New iPhones, new iPads, new laptops. More iPhones, more iPads, more laptops. That's why mobile device management has become such a hot topic in the corporate world and is making its way down to mid-size and even small enterprise companies. And that's why you need Jamf Now. Jamf Now is easy to set up and easy to deploy on your devices. Once that's done, there are all sorts of new capabilities you have remotely. Whether the device is across the room or across the globe, Jamf Now lets you view device details, including settings, apps, and more. Knowing what apps are on your devices is nice, but with Jamf Now and the Apple Volume Purchase Program, you can buy apps in bulk and easily distribute them to the devices that need them. Want more security? You can enforce full file vault encryption on the Mac and keep the recovery key in the device details. The Asset Tag capability links your physical inventory to your digital records, making it easy to know what assets are where. You can even customize the information by using the custom fields to include your own data. Warranty information is also an option that you can keep track of and extend your coverage as needed for each individual device. Those are just some of the things you can do with your devices through Jamf Now. What makes it even more impressive is that it doesn't matter where those devices are. You never need to touch them, even to set them up. Just download the Jamf Now app and get started. I really want you to try Jamf now and find out just how useful and simple remote device management is. The people at Jamf do too. That's why you can go to jamf.com/MacVoices right now and set up your first 3 devices for free. No cost now, no cost ever for your first 3 devices. After you've discovered how valuable Jamf now is, just a couple of dollars per month per device, and you can outfit all the devices in your organization. Macs, iPhones, and iPads. That's jamf.com/MacVoices to set up your first 3 devices free and try out Jamf now. Find out how easy mobile device management can be. Thanks to Jamf for their support of MacVoices. Joe, I want to go back to you for a second. You say you watch an unhealthy amount of TV, which you're the guy I would have thought that probably didn't even own a TV as much content as you put out and stuff that you do. So how do you find time? You really must not sleep.
I got kids that keep me awake. When I say unhealthy, I mean, I watch TV when I really should be sleeping or working. I don't. It's not like I watch 4 hours a day. I might watch 2 hours a day. Some days I watch 0, but it's sort of and then of course that's not counting, mind you, the kids' TV shows that are on almost all the time. I try not to pay too much attention to those because I pretty much already know my alphabet. But there is a
T
lot
is
of
for
that.
take control.
That's right. There is a lot of that going. But what I mean is, like, I will often work until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, sometimes 10 o'clock at night, and my wife will too. And then we'll go into the living room. It's like, well, what's it going to be tonight? Because we need to watch something to unwind. And then we'll watch, like last night, we're like, okay, I think we're feeling House of Cards. We watched an episode of House of Cards. And you know how Netflix just likes to roll right over into the next episode?
Terrible.
We kind of just didn't feel like reaching all the way over there for the remote to stop it. And we just kind of let it go. And then after it started into the 3rd episode, we're like, oh man, there's some kid's going to wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I just can't do another one. And so then when that happens and I'm awake at an ungodly hour, I'm like, did I really need to watch 2 episodes of House of Cards last night? And I'm going to be feeling it for the whole rest of the day. But even with that, even with our couple hours of tea, sometimes a little bit more on the weekends, even there. And like sometimes I'll take my iPad when I go to the gym and I'll put it on the treadmill or something, and I'll watch watch TV shows or movies while I'm running. But even there, it's like that. I feel kind of guilty about the amount that I consume, but I also feel kind of guilty for all the great stuff that I know I'm missing.
Lots of stuff here that's interesting. I'm glad to kind of get into the to your recreational lives. But let's bring it back to Apple. I don't know about you. I have not been running any of the betas. I just feel like I either don't have time or the devices I would install them on are just mission critical for what I do. Either one of you played at all with any of the betas for iOS, watchOS, High Sierra? Because we've got a busy fall coming.
Yeah, I kind of have to because we're making books about them. Coming soon. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, not on the machine that I am currently using for this, but yeah, I've installed High Sierra a bunch of times, and I also have iOS 11 running on a couple of devices. And, I mean, they're kind of typical betas. There are things that don't quite work yet, and there are things that are a little bit shaky, but mostly they're fine. As far as I haven't done the new watchOS yet. I haven't tried that. High Sierra, I will say there's not a whole lot that's new that really affects me. I mean, Metal 2, okay, I mean, like all the sort of infrastructure stuff, like, okay, yeah, it's, APFS, files duplicate faster and all that. That's really good. I'm glad for that. But there aren't really any new features that are going to revolutionize my workflow or my life. It's just fine. It's like, it's basically a very decent, respectable, small update. On the iOS side, there are some things that are easier to read now. That's neat. There are, the multitasking options work better. That's neat. I don't have an iPad Pro, so I can't take advantage of some of the new things. I should say I don't have an iPad Pro yet. I will. But even there, a lot of the new features are kind of like, well, yes, it's nice that Siri's voice has improved. And there are some really cool things relating to driving, the do not disturb while driving, and improvements to maps and stuff like that. So that's all nice, but I think we're a few versions past where I can ever expect that any iOS app or any iOS software update is going to rock my world. I think it's just going to get a little bit better and it's going to be fine. I see a question here. She is asking in the chat, have I tried the iOS 2A data transfer with gym equipment? No, I haven't tried that, but that would be interesting.
I have to admit I haven't tried it either, and I don't use gym equipment, so I will never try it. But my money is so on that not working. I mean, it's Bluetooth, it's funky equipment. It's so not going to work.
Well, let me tell you, the gym I go to was literally just built like 3 years ago, and all of the machines, all the treadmills and elliptical trainers and all those things, they all have charging stations for your iPhone. They all have 30-pin dock connectors.
Yeah,
hardwired 30-pin dock connectors. So by the time this facility was built, Apple had already stopped shipping devices that have those connectors a couple of years previously. So so I don't really expect them to like rush out and update all their equipment to the latest.
No.
Yeah, they got a deal on it, Joe. That's what happened. They got a great deal on the equipment.
I guess.
I think
because it was the connector.
I think High Sierra's. Obviously, Apple keeps doing this sort of stair-step approach where you get a new version that has a new name, and then you get another version which doesn't really add new features and has a related name: Lion and Mountain Lion, Yosemite and El Capitan, Sierra and High Sierra, et cetera, et cetera. And so you really shouldn't expect there to be significant changes in High Sierra that you will notice sort of in what you'll think of as the Mac, like the operating system, the Finder. There are big changes under the hood, but they're not meant for you to notice. They're meant to just make things more efficient, more faster, work better in theory.
Well, I will say this. One of the things that Apple seems to be going for is to reduce annoyances. So if, getting info on a big folder takes like minutes in Sierra and almost instant in High Sierra, you're going to go, oh, I'm suddenly not annoyed by that. And you're going to very quickly get used to not being annoyed by that, such that if you ever go back to using an old system, you're like, what? And there are a bunch of things that are kind of like that in terms of, okay, like in Safari, all the do not track stuff and the blocking autoplay videos.
Macworld, sorry.
Yeah, Macworld. But there are a lot of things in Safari, especially in the OS generally, and in a couple of other places that are designed to eliminate annoyances, and that's great. And you're going to probably notice in the first few days or couple weeks that you use High Sierra, oh yes, I feel a little bit lighter, a little happier now than I used to, but that's going to quickly fade. You're only really going to notice this if you ever have occasion to go back and use an older system. You're going to get used to that absence of annoyances as the new normal really, really fast. And you're going to start thinking, well, gee, all I'm feeling is less annoyed. I'm not actually feeling actively more productive or act like there's not a cool new feature that I can use. So that's, kind of good.
The thing that I think, and I haven't played with this much, so I'm speaking more generally than from personal experience. But I think the app that may in fact be getting the most changes in High Sierra is Photos. And one of the things that I think is a little frustrating for for users is that Apple will add all these great features to Photos. You'll have a new sidebar, you'll have better organizational features with filtering and all this kind of cool stuff, and you will not be able to get those for Sierra or El Capitan or Yosemite. Even though Photos, you sort of think, why? I mean, Photos is an app. You should be able to move the apps around, and it just isn't true. That Apple nowadays is seeing all of the apps that are associated with the operating system, with a sort of exception of Safari, I think. Safari will sometimes get features going backwards as really being associated with the operating system. So if you want the new features of Photos, and that's really all you want, you'll want to move to High Sierra. But as Joe says, the annoyances going away is a really good thing. I just, for reasons I probably even shouldn't get into, I spent a whole lot of time moving a vast amount of data between two disks, one of which was failing. And let me tell you, that stuff's still really slow and painful. And I had to try multiple times, and I had problems with iCloud Photo Library, and I had problems with this and that. And, I was like, this was just fussy. And I was thinking, boy, it would have been nice if it's all been APFS. So, and Thunderbolt 3, actually, which it wasn't.
And that's a good jump-in point, Adam. With the new file system, do you all, either one of you, do you feel like this is a big? It's a big change. Is it going to be a painful change for all of us, or is it going to be, as a lot of people have said, a pretty seamless thing where it's done and you don't have to worry about it? And if you plug in something formatted other than in the new system, that it's going to be seamless?
I think for most people, for almost everyone, it's going to be seamless. I mean, everybody who's using iOS 10 on their phones and iPads is already using APFS. That change already happened, and we didn't even know until after it happened. It was just transparent and invisible. So Apple sort of used that as proof that, yes, we can do this safely and effectively. And there's a little bit of a difference on the Mac, because you can have external disks on the Mac, and you might have a Mac running an older operating system. So there are a bunch of scenarios in which you could still run into problems. For example, let's say that you have a backup drive that you share among multiple Macs, and so you format that as APFS, and you store a clone on that or whatever, and then you hook it up to another Mac that's still running, let's say, El Capitan or older. Well, it just won't be able to mount, won't be able to read the disk at all, because Sierra is the first OS that can even read APFS disks. And so there are certain situations that you are far more likely to encounter on a Mac than on an iOS device, where it could kind of break. I think most people will not encounter these situations very often. They are kind of edge cases. They're not like super rare, struck by lightning kind of edge cases, but I think they are going to be uncommon enough that most people either will not encounter them at all, or will figure out workarounds pretty fast.
I do think you'll also want to be a little careful with older, say, disk recovery software or disk formatting software, things like that. Those will all be updated, but I would be really leery of running an older copy of such a utility on an APFS drive. It might just eat it. Not knowing what's going on at all. So you'll know if you're that sort of person, right? If you're the sort of person who just uses your Mac normally, you're not going to notice. If you're the sort of person who has a ton of utilities and this old one that you really like because it did the special thing once for you when you were recovering, then you might want to be a little more circumspect about it. But correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, you've done most of the installs. APFS is not going to be optional, right?
Well, in the first 3 or 4 betas, it was optional. There was a checkbox in the installer. You could say, do you want this or not? And around beta 4 or 5, I forget, that checkbox went away. Yeah. And what was interesting about that is that if your computer supports APFS, you're not given the choice. It just does the conversion for you automatically. There are some situations in which certain configurations, at least at this moment of the beta process, do not support APFS, and so those aren't converted. I mean, you never know the difference. It's not telling you now converting to APFS. It just either does it or doesn't, and the installer finishes, and now you're running High Sierra. It's like, I'm going to have to go check. I'm going to have to open disk utility and see if I'm using APFS. and most people will, but at least during the public beta portion, there will be some setups, some computer configurations that won't work with it. I forget. I don't know if this is one of the changes that they've fixed yet or not, but at least for some of the betas, you couldn't install. You couldn't use APFS if your computer is all hard drive based. That is, no SSD, no Fusion drive. If it's all hard disk based, then APFS wasn't working. I can't recall if they've already fixed that or if that's coming soon. But
you want a new computer or a new SSD anyway. So at that point,
well, of course you do.
I mean, hard drives are seriously, folks. If you're still running on a Mac with just a hard drive, not a Fusion drive or an SSD, the biggest bang for your buck, performance-wise, that you can do is to switch to an SSD. Fusion drive a little less so, and those have the other issues with you can't really just install them in many computers. But SSD all the way is what we recommend these days.
Yeah. Question from the audience, and Joe, I think you were the one that brought it up. Autoplay. The question is, is autoplay blocking welcomed?
Well,
and I got to just jump in and say, have you been on any of the web services lately? Of course, it's welcome. But Joe,
well, all right, I'm going to answer that question, but first I'm going to digress. A week or two ago, Netflix made a change on, like, if you use the Apple TV, you're using the Netflix app. And you're like scrolling around, you're looking at descriptions of different things. If you look at a description of a show for more than whatever it is, 10 or 15 seconds, a trailer starts playing, audio and video, automatically. You can't stop it. You can't pause it. You can push the menu button to back out, but it's not in a window. It's in the background. It's just playing. And I'm deeply offended by that. Obviously, I'm in Netflix because I want to watch your video, but I don't want to start watching it until I'm ready. Maybe I'm having a conversation. Maybe I'm trying to read the description. Maybe I'm, chatting with my wife about what kind of thing we want to watch tonight. Maybe there's a phone call. I don't want to have stuff playing that I can't control. And I feel the same way when I go to macworld.com or any of the, a lot of the news sites, and Facebook. Ugh, Facebook. No, I can click the button when I'm ready to watch the video, if I even want to watch it at all. That's not a hardship for me. I don't understand. I don't think, I could be wrong. There could be one person out there in the world that will disprove this. But I really don't think anybody was saying, please, websites of the world, the one thing we just really wish you would add is autoplay videos everywhere. I'm so much happier now that we have those. You've made my life more complete. I don't think anybody thinks that way. I think this is just...
other than advertisers.
Right. It's the advertisers that want to do this, not, it's not making anybody's lives better. It's not improving usability. It's just super irritating. So I am so behind, taking back control over when videos play. Obviously, there are already ways to do this. There are extensions and preferences and things you can do to make videos not play automatically. But I think the way that Safari is going to handle that from now on will be much easier and much more seamless. And thank you, Apple, for doing that, because and not only that, but mind you, the reader mode, the reader view is going to be the default.
Yeah,
so
that's going to be really interesting.
On many websites where you are currently inundated by ads everywhere and a little bit of content, the default will be no ads and all the content. And that's going to really upset a lot of advertisers and a lot of publishers that make their money from advertising. And I get that, and I feel their pain, but I think the pain of people trying to just read what they want to read and not be assaulted with all this other stuff is a bigger pain.
Another question from the audience. Apple is really stressing privacy with iOS 11. For example, photos will not allow access to the entire library, only the photos you select. Any thoughts? Great question. Great point. I did not know that about photos in iOS 11.
Me neither.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I would assume that certain apps would need access to the library because they need to be able to allow you to select a photo, an arbitrary photo, that you're not necessarily doing. But again, I haven't run into that before. I mean, it is worth keeping in mind that Apple has a really interesting story with privacy because unlike pretty much any other company out there, Apple makes no money off of your data. Well, not entirely true. They make no money off of your data, but they need your data to be able to improve their services. And so Siri and whatnot, Apple really is using that data behind the scenes to make Siri better in all of those ways. But unlike Google and Amazon and Facebook and Microsoft and everyone, Apple really doesn't benefit in nearly as direct a way from that. So so privacy will be something that Apple continues to double down on. That said, I will say that photos is one of the places where I continue to be irritated at Apple, and I have been irritated at Apple, gosh, for decades now, it seems, because they don't make it easy to share photo libraries among a family. They just don't. I mean, I'm sorry, my wife and I have a shared photo collection. That's what a family is all about. And, we've got family sharing, worthless. They've got a shared album, almost as worthless. It's just, we just want one big collection of all our photos. And Apple has never, ever done that well, and they still haven't, and I'm still put out about it. I think Google Photos is actually starting to add that now, where you can share your entire library with another person. And, not going to switch to Google Photos because of sort of all the work I have to do, but nonetheless, I get annoyed when I have to look at other places and say, well, if I use this, it would be better.
I agree with all of that. Oh, sorry, Chuck, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead, Joe.
I agree with all of that. I have made some well-documented rants on Apple's failings when it comes to sharing stuff. And we have exactly the same thing. Like my wife and I are both constantly taking pictures and videos of our kids, and the only way we share them is if we manually select all of them and drag them to the shared library. It's nutso. Having said that, though, apart from the irritations around sharing things the way you want to share them, I want to also agree with and amplify Adam's comment that Apple has a kind of unique stance around privacy. It's as though they want you to take control of your online privacy. And this is, it's a really big deal to me, and not just because I've written books about it, but because the way everything is going in the world today, everybody kind of wants a piece of you. They want a piece of your data. Everybody, the advertisers want to know what you're up to, and government wants to know what you're up to, and big corporations want to know what you're up to. Everybody wants to get into your stuff. And anything that increases sort of your default level of privacy, even if it involves maybe a minor inconvenience, is a good step in my book.
I think I'm going to throw in somewhere closer to you, Joe. I get the idea that there are things that you would like to share more easily. Maybe Apple, maybe a lot of these services or operating systems could make the option of sharing things easier. But I really appreciate the fact that they don't go there by default for the most part. That they say, okay, are you sure you want to do this? Because, Adam, to your point, taking both of you, you're taking videos of your kids and different things, and that's great. But there are other times that I'm sure there are things that you take photos of that maybe you just want for you, and not that there's anything nefarious. Just that it only applies to you. Adam, you may decide that you need a particular part for one of your running shoes. That didn't come out right.
Laces are about
okay.
Well,
so you take a picture of that, and that's just for you as a notepad kind of thing. You don't want that shared necessarily to a family library.
So and actually, there's a question that came up in the chat about this too. And so I really do think. I mean, there, in sort of a business standpoint, it is possible that you could end up like, let's say you're a real estate agent, you're taking a ton of photos of houses you're selling or something like that. Maybe those shouldn't be part of a general family album, general family share. But a lot of this stuff has really come much more recently. That, when we started with all this in iPhoto back many, many years ago, that was really not so much the case. And what I guess a lot of us sort of grew up with was the family photo album. Like, anyone would take the camera and take a picture, and then they would all go together. And, particularly, again, with families with kids and stuff like that. Losing my audio. Sorry about that, folks. I'm just saying that we're in a situation where you cannot do something that seems entirely normal. That the wanting to have private photos from your spouse is a little weird, honestly. It's, yeah, you was like, they may not be interested in some of them. They might be screenshots or something, but it's not like you're trying to hide something. And I think Apple has just sort of pushed all that off. And the original family sharing that they did, you could share entire libraries, and you still can do that, but it's just read only. I mean, you can just sort of look at the other person's stuff and copy stuff in as you want to. It's not the big shared pool of all the family photos. So like, and you're right, and I get that that Apple is saying, well, you might want to share 90% of your photos with someone else, but what if you take a picture of something that you just don't want to share? But let me just throw out a sort of radical proposal here. Photos, as we know, has face recognition. It can tell if a photo that I have taken is a photo of my kid. Also, Photos has a smart album that will put all screenshots in it. Why can't I make a rule, like you make a rule in mail that says any photo with a picture of my kid in it goes into the family album. Any photo with a screenshot doesn't. It goes here into the screenshots album. I mean, these are the kinds of things that would make my life substantially better. They are totally possible with today's technology. No new things need to be thought up or invented. You just have to add a little thing. And Google Photos does them. It's not like it hasn't even been done.
Right. So that's the kind of thing that I really would like Apple to do, is to just give me the flexibility to make my own decisions about what kinds of things should and should not be shared in various ways.
Okay, I desperately want to get in on this, but I'm not going to, because we have a question from the audience. And there's one question I want to make sure we get to before we run out of time here. The question from the audience is, what do you all think of the new HomePod, or the soon to be seen HomePod?
Unicorns.
Joe?
It's difficult for me to comment intelligently on a thing that you can't buy yet. Let me just say, if I ever own a HomePod, it will only be because we're doing a book on it, or I'm writing an article or something, like I need to have it for work. It is not an object that I would ever want to have personally. It is not something that solves a problem that I have. It's not something that meets a need that I have. It's not something that I've ever thought, oh, if only I could have an object in my living room or in each of my rooms that does this, then wouldn't things be so much better? So for me, I am not the sort of person who has music on all the time. I don't automatically have music on when I get into my car. I don't automatically have music on in my house. I listen to music when I'm in the mood to listen to music, and then I decide, well, this is what I want to listen to right now, and then I turn that on. It is just not, I like to have quiet most of the time. I like to be able to think. And so the function of having music playing, beautiful, rich, wonderful music, anytime you want, any place you want, that's okay. I have ways of listening to music when I want to and where I want to. That's not a need for me. This need of being able to just speak commands and have the right thing happen. Well, I already have ways of doing that with my devices that have Siri. I've never had really the slightest interest in Alexa or like Amazon, like any of the Amazon or Google products that have the, like, you know, the little boxes with microphones and speakers that you talk to and that do stuff for you. Like that, again, I'm sure that's great for some people. It doesn't meet a need for me. So I basically can't figure out why I would spend money and shelf space on this object. It might be great for people who are different from me, but for people who are identical to me, you know who you are.
So I will say that I'm far from, you know, like a music aficionado who, you know, is always like checking out the latest music or listening to music nonstop. But that said, I do like listening to music, and I like having background music on when I'm making dinner and things like that. And right now, our house was built in 1984, and the guy who did it was an engineer who wired it with everything that was new in 1984. So we've got coax. We even have some kind of Apple Talk like networking cables in the walls. We're not sure what they are, but he put in speakers. So there's actually some speakers that were wired into the house and the speaker wiring, and so we've kind of got this like speakers throughout the house thing, but it doesn't work very well. You have to like put buttons on the stereo to see which speakers are active and all this kind of stuff.
Pushing buttons, wired speakers like a savage. Wow.
No, it's more that you move throughout the house, and if you didn't set it up correctly, then it just drops away all the time. So it's just awkward. And the speakers are not that high quality because they were, you know, built-in speakers in 1984. So for all those reasons, I am actually somewhat looking forward to the HomePod. I think it will be interesting to see what the quality level is, because Apple has put in some really interesting technology as far as how they're going to be managing the audio. And it's also interesting to me that Apple is pushing it as a speaker first, rather than a personal assistant like Alexa, you know, for the Amazon Echo and the Google Home. We have a Google Home. My brother-in-law gave it to me for Christmas because he works at Google, and we just stopped using it. Just completely. We used it for a while. I was using Spotify, and you could tell it to play music, and that was sort of good, except for the fact that it was really stupid in a lot of ways. You know, you'd have to actually tell it to play something, and then you'd have to tell it to shuffle something, because it would always play in exactly the same order. And so if you're just playing like an artist's tracks, you would get the most popular one, and then the second most popular one. Boy, really annoying. So, and then a lot of the questions, like the Smart Assistant questions, they're bar trivia. You know, it's the sort of, you know, like, ooh, who won the Super Bowl in 1979? I couldn't care less. But, you know, if I want to find out, I can find out in a lot of different ways. And they tend not to know the stuff I personally do want to find out, like, what is the world record in the marathon right now? You know, what is the world record and what is the American record in the 5,000 meters for women? I do know that because the woman who owns it was a local, so you know her. But so it's just, you know, these kinds of questions. It's not how I think most people live. I don't think people wander around thinking, I wonder who has the world record in the marathon. They just don't. You know, and Google tries to keep sending me emails saying, you could ask it this, you could ask it, tell it that. But every time I look at their examples, I think people don't do that. You know, you're suggesting it because they don't do it. You know, if they automatically thought about it, you wouldn't have to suggest it. So I am unimpressed by the personal assistants, and I don't think that Siri is going to be an interesting feature for the HomePod much because of that. It will be good for control. You know, if you want to say, play me, you know, my favorite list from Apple Music, that it'll do that really well. And that's a good thing, because manual. It is fussy to like work with manual controls while you're cooking and your hands are dirty and stuff like that. So. Just to tie this in, actually, to another question that we got is, what is your vision for consumer technology in the near future or next to 5-10 years? That's a big question. But I will say the one thing, I'm not a big fan of these voice interfaces. I think that we actually have enough trouble talking to people. And talking to computers that are not going to be as good as people at understanding us is actually going to be a really hard problem to continue to solve. We're getting better at it, and no question about it. But, you know, when people use Siri now, they usually figure out the 5 things that Siri can understand them doing. And I really don't see that. I mean, it's going to be improving all the time. We're going to see more and more of it because hands-free is a big deal. But I don't see that being a really big deal. What I am looking forward to, and I think we will see in the next 5, maybe more years, actually, is glasses with first heads-up displays, sort of like an Apple Watch for your face, and then going further, augmented reality, where the glasses will be able to overlay something virtual onto what you're seeing, and that will be kind of interesting. Google Glass was the big thing to start that off, but it was primitive. It got an undeservedly bad reputation for privacy, given the fact that people were doing exactly the same things with their smartphones all the time. But it's starting to catch on a lot more in the business world, in the industrial world, where people need to be seeing, like, exactly what is the procedure for disassembling this part, or show me the instructions on the side while I'm performing this task. So I think the glasses in the 5-year frame are going to be something that we'll all be looking at.
Joe, I want you to answer the same question, because one thing I really applauded MacGroup-Detroit for when we set this up was they said that we really aren't interested in reminiscing about the past. They want to look to the future, and I think that's a fantastic attitude for every Mac user group and out there. So
when I was telnetting uphill in the snow,
it was uphill both ways.
Yeah, but Joe, before you do, I want to make sure everyone write down that quote from Adam Engst that it will be like an Apple Watch for your face.
I can't take full credit for that. That actually did come from an augmented reality expert who was talking about this time frame. But I actually think it's a very important distinction. An Apple Watch for your face is just a display that you interact with in a very limited way. And you use another device, like probably an iPhone, to provide most of the smarts and the processing for. That's an interesting way to think about it, because as a heads-up display is very different than the full-on like virtual reality goggles or augmented reality headset, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Joe, 10 to 15 years, what do you see, or what do you want to see?
Well, besides teleportation.
Well, okay, so let me nobody's brought this up yet, so it has to be said. You all know, don't you, that they are making a live-action version of the Jetsons? Okay, so this is happening. No. Okay, they're making a live-action version of the Jetsons.
Who plays the robot maid?
I don't know. I don't. Anyway, so I grew up watching the Jetsons and all these other, like, what the future is going to be like in 1985, like
2000
the future, yeah, 2015. Oh boy, that was in the second Back to the Future movie, that was where they were going, and boy, that was going to be, we're going to have hoverboards and all that kind of stuff, and
we got hoverboards. They just blow up in airplanes.
Well, yeah. So as the future has come and gone, and as technology has progressed, what I've realized is not just that everybody was wrong in their predictions. I mean, like massively wrong. But that the things I thought I would really care about, I actually don't care about at all. Like, I thought that everyone would have and everybody would want and see the obvious need for household robots like Rosie, okay, who would do the dishes and the vacuuming and make the meals and watch your kids and do all these different things. And now I can't quite get myself back into that frame of thinking anymore. Like, well, I already do have a robotic dishwasher. It's called a dishwasher, and I
still want a flying car.
No, I don't want a flying car, but
not with the bubble top. You don't want
autonomous flying cars. Come on.
What could go wrong?
Braking is the thing that concerns me with flying cars. But you can get a robotic vacuum cleaner if you want, and you can get individual appliances that will do most of the things that this humanoid robotic assistant was supposed to do in some version of the future decades ago. But it turns out that a lot of the things I thought, well, of course, Of course, I want to have a panel on my desk with buttons that will let me turn on all the lights and open and close the windows and do all this kind of stuff. And like now that I'm here in the future, and I actually could do all that stuff if I wanted to, and if I had the money, I'm like, all right, but when I walk into a room, I go like this and the light's on. And I go like this and the light's off. How is it better for me to say, hey, Siri, hey, how is it better for me to speak a command to do that thing, or pull a device out of my pocket, or to use the app on my watch to turn the lights on or off? Like you can do it, you can if you want to, but how is that easier or better? Like for me in my house, it's not easier or better. It doesn't improve my life to replace this gesture with electronics and an app. So my sort of long-winded answer to the question is, I don't really care. Like I have right now, in terms of consumer electronics and consumer technology, I feel like I have as much as would be useful to me in my current life and my current lifestyle. There aren't capabilities that I'm really wishing for or hoping for in the next 5 to 10 years that, oh, if only somebody would make this, then this annoyance would go away, or this wonderful new capability would come to me. I'm like, no, then I'm good. Like I got my smartphone, my watch, and I got my computer, my TV, and there'll be, higher res TVs and higher res displays and faster computers and slimmer watches and longer battery life and all that. Those things will happen. Of course they will. And there'll be cool new iPhones. And I'll get a cool new iPhone. But like basically, I feel like, yeah, I'm good. And so I know that's like not the answer anybody wants to hear. Of course, there's going to be new stuff, but I can't really work up much excitement or enthusiasm about it. Because I don't use technology because it's technology and it's new devices. I make my choices about what to buy and use based on how it's going to improve my life. And that's the only thing that matters to me is, will this make my life better somehow? So and until I can see that obvious gap that needs filling,
All that said, I do agree. I do agree with Joe. But we really like our all electric Nissan Leaf. Electric cars rock. So that'll be future too. 8 to 10 years, it won't be any gas cars.
And I want to throw this in too. I think we're suddenly all impatient to get to that. Pick your future, Jetsons, Star Trek, whatever. I think we're on the path. I think we're farther along the path maybe than we ever thought we would be. Because it was, when we were all growing up, so much of that stuff was, honest to God, just so much fantasy. And now so much of it has come true. And now we're impatient for the rest of it. And the rest of it is like that, that last 500 feet. It's tough to get to.
Well,
so, when you have people complaining about, well, I have to talk to Siri in a certain way, and I just want to shout at her and say whatever I want to say and have her understand me. Well, yeah, I'd like to have that too, but I don't even have that with some of the other people in my life. I shout at them and they don't understand me. So,
Well, precisely. But here's the thing. I mean, I think actually when you start comparing, fictional futures to where we actually got, one of the things that's fascinating to look at, and you can even see this like in Star Trek Next Generation, for instance, it's very easy to imagine objects that interact with the real world. Right? They have their transporters and their phasers and this and that and the other thing. Those we're really bad at, it turns out. That what we're really good at is information, moving data. We're really, really good at that. And they were terrible at it. There's this whole Star Trek show where they're like, hey, we think we've got a video feed from Geordi's visor. Like, you guys came up with Skype? I mean, that was the extent of this was your big revelation. You can transport people from this outer space to the surface of a planet, but you can't do Skype. It was really, it was just fascinating the level to which they didn't do information. And that's where a whole lot of these things have failed. The Jetsons, same thing. It's all about the objects in their world. And I think the objects are where both we're not very good, and we have ties to objects. We understand how they work. They interface with our bodies physically. You can't just do anything, and there's also a whole lot of power issues. Like phasers. Well, we know how to make lasers, but getting one that like in a size this big that can actually cut through something? No, it's too much power. And so, it's really interesting when you start evaluating any future thing. Does this make sense because it's mostly an information transfer versus something where you're going to, changing how our bodies work or how we interact with the real world? I'll shut up now.
Gentlemen, with that, we're kind of out of time, and I want to make sure we don't overstay our welcome. So I would like to thank MacGroup-Detroit for having Adam Engst, Joe Kissell, and myself on their 31st anniversary. Congratulations, folks. Here's to another 31.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much, Chuck.
We will see you again soon, I hope.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully I won't have too much microphone feedback and we can interact a little easier.
Because we're just getting better at the internet, the data stuff all the time.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.